The movie Dark Planet. It's the year 2157, and the world has advanced so much that all diseases are curable, and space travel is totally normal. We follow Max, who's constantly traveling through space. His mom tries to call him during one of his trips, wanting him to cancel his journey and come back to finish his studies at university. But he doesn't pick up. Suddenly, his spaceship crashes into a fiery asteroid, throwing everything off balance. Max has to make an emergency landing on the nearest planet he can find. He manages to land safely, but then the spaceship explodes, leaving him stranded on this new planet. Instead of panicking, Max stays calm and starts exploring. While walking around, he spots a fire burning, which means there are inhabitants on the planet. He's shocked when he comes across a strange-looking creature. Max tries to get closer, but the creature runs away before he can interact with it. A guy suddenly shows up, pointing a weapon at Max, and starts talking to him in a language Max doesn't understand. Max takes advantage of the guy's distraction and quickly puts on a translation device in his ear. But as soon as the guy notices Max putting something in his ear, he fires at the other devices nearby, knocking them to the ground, and then grabs Max, taking him to the city. Max is shocked when he realizes the planet he's landed on looks just like Earth back in the early 2000s, around 2008. The guy drags Max to a lab and hooks him up to a machine that's supposed to read his thoughts to figure out who he is and why he's on their planet. But they're stunned to see that Max's thoughts are all scrambled, and they think he's insane. So they send him off to a mental hospital, accompanied by a soldier named John. Meanwhile, the police and the people are passionately singing the national anthem, and the guy who captured Max suddenly has a seizure. The police quickly kill him, and then Max and John head to the hospital. Suddenly, there's a huge explosion in the city, and a building collapses right in the middle of the city, with part of it crashing onto the train that's taking Max and John to the hospital. John gets hurt and falls off the train, but Max rushes to save him. When Max asks John what happened, John explains that rebels are trying to destroy the city and take down the system. A character tells Max that all traffic is halted because of a certain situation, so they decide to walk to the city. At this moment, Stroud, the head of scientific research on the planet, learns about Max's arrival and instructs his assistant, Vanki, to capture him at any cost and bring him to the center. Later, we see Max in a mental hospital, trapped in a glass device filled with water, with doctors around him reading his thoughts to understand why he came to this planet. Vanki then enters and tells the doctors that Stroud has ordered Max to be taken to the lab. Meanwhile, Prosecutor Omit asks his assistant for updates on Max. Omit looks at his watch, rushes to the bathroom, and places something strange in his mouth, which causes him to have a seizure. Meanwhile, Max is seen on his way to the lab with Vanki. But as the city's clock strikes, Vanki has another seizure. The police quickly arrest both him and Max. The public is chanting slogans against the police, and Max uses the chaos to escape. Stroud, Omit, and a group of city leaders gather, revealing that the government is a dictatorship, where any leader who disobeys orders or challenges the city's rule is killed. At this point, Max is wandering the city and enters a restaurant where he meets a waitress named Roya, who is upset because a customer tried to harass her and insulted her. Max gets angry, confronts the man, and hits him. Roya thanks Max and tells him he must be new in the city since she's never seen him before. Max starts to tell her his story, and she sympathizes with him after learning that he has no place to stay. She invites him to her house, and he agrees. On their way back to her house, they encounter the man Max fought in the restaurant, who, along with his men, tries to kill Max. However, Max is unaffected by their attacks because he is much stronger than them and defeats them all. He and Roya then continue to her house, where Max is surprised to find Johnny, who turns out to be her brother. Johnny thanks Max again for saving his life and invites him to stay with them. A few days later, Johnny asks Max to join the police force because he believes Max is strong and deserving of the position. Max agrees. But Johnny points out that there's a problem. Max doesn't have any identification papers. Johnny assures him not to worry, as he will speak with Police Chief Chow and ensure Max gets the job. Johnny successfully convinces Chow, and Max begins his training. Chow is amazed by Max's courage and shooting skills and invites him on their first patrol. Max is thrilled because he is finally living his dream on this planet. The next day, Johnny tells Max that they need to go to the police station because the rebels have attacked the city. Max rushes to the scene of the attack and is shocked to find that the rebels are actually the citizens. He is even more horrified by the police's brutal treatment of them. Disgusted, Max puts down his weapon, which enrages Chow, who tells Max that this is the time they need him most and that he shouldn't abandon them. Max replies that he won't leave as long as they're doing the right thing, but warns them not to kill the citizens for opposing the oppressive regime. He tells them that they're only making things worse by killing the people. Meanwhile, the prison warden interrogates the prisoners in a dictatorial manner, executing some and forcing the others into hard labor, torturing them in the most horrific ways. At this moment, the prison warden notices one of the rebels, who has an iron hand, mocking him. The warden orders his assistants to put the rebel in a device that releases toxic gases because he is inciting the people against the government and calling for a coup against the leader. Max witnesses all of this and becomes increasingly upset by what's happening. He goes to Johnny, asking him to help save the people, but Johnny refuses, saying he won't rescue troublemakers. Chow overhears their conversation and orders Johnny and Max to go to the forest. Upon arrival, Chow instructs Max to kill the rebels there to prove his loyalty. Max agrees, but instead goes to the rebels and makes a plan with them to escape the forest. Eventually, Chow discovers this and confronts Max, calling him a coward and a traitor. Chow pulls out his gun, shoots Max, and leaves him, telling the rebels to search the forest for Max's body to bury him. However, they are shocked to find Max standing before them unharmed. Max explains that he is from Earth, where medical science is highly advanced, and he had received a vaccine that makes him immune to injury and death unless shot in the head. The rebels are astonished by Earth's medical advancements. One of the rebels expresses his desire to leave the planet due to the oppression they're facing and mentions that Omit and Stroud are tyrannical rulers who love to control people's minds through the towers installed in the city. These towers emit radiation that controls the human brain, compelling them to obey orders. Because the rebels discovered a way to block these signals from affecting their brains, they were labeled as rebels, and now the government wants to kill them. At this moment, the towers begin to emit radiation. Since the rebels know the timing, they place devices on their faces to avoid suffocation. They teach Max to do the same. After the radiation stops, Max asks for their help to enter the city and save Johnny from Chow's control, and they agree as they reach the city's borders. The police see them and start shooting. Max ignores the gunfire, heads to the tower, and plants a series of bombs inside before the explosion. He and the only surviving rebel escape. The next day, Max returns to the city to check on Roya. A police officer sees him entering the house and alerts the authorities. Max is shocked to find Johnny inside the house, who begins to explain everything he knows and asks Max to come with him and migrate to Earth, leaving this planet behind. However, Johnny refuses and asks Max to leave because he doesn't want to see him arrested. At that moment, Chow and the police arrive at the house. Roya pleads with Max to surrender, but he tries to escape. Chow becomes furious and threatens Roya, saying he will kill her if Max doesn't surrender. Reluctantly, Max gives himself up. Max is then taken to prison, where he meets two other prisoners, Roy, the man with the iron hand, and another named Liv. They agree to escape at the earliest opportunity. Meanwhile, Stroud meets with Omit and asks him to release Max and hand him over so that Stroud can continue his research and benefit from Max's knowledge. Stroud leaves Omit with a file containing all of Max's information. After Stroud leaves, Omit reads the file and is shocked to learn that Max is immune to radiation waves and is resistant to death. He orders his assistant to help Max escape from prison and fake his death, then bring him to the palace so they can harness his abilities. The next day, Omit's assistant starts executing the plan. During a forest outing with the prisoners, Max, Roy, and Liv manage to escape from Omit's assistant and the police. While they are on the run, they encounter military robots that begin firing at them. At the last moment, Max throws a bomb, destroying all the robots. Max, Roy, and Liv continue their journey to the border, where they are confronted by tanks firing at them randomly. Max realizes that he can control the tank's timing for firing and tells Roy and Liv that he has a plan. He will get inside the tank, cross the border, and return to his homeland. Roy warns him that it's very dangerous because the border is lined with mines, but Max assures him that he won't be harmed and successfully crosses the minefield. Meanwhile, Omit is furious after learning of Max's escape and starts destroying his lab in a fit of rage. When Max reaches the border, he sees Johnny, who is surprised to see the tank crossing the border and changing course. Johnny decides to inspect it and is shocked to find Max inside. Max pulls Johnny into the tank, restrains him, and tells him that he is taking him and Roya to Earth because they deserve a better life, and Earth can offer them that. Max repairs his spaceship, boards it, and travels to Earth, rescuing Johnny and Roya from the tyranny of the planet. This marks the end of the film.